Welcome, everybody, to the Bradley Beach Historical Society. Presentation today will be from Sue and Robert Flood on Pathworks to Researching Bradley Beach. My name is Paul Nishampkin, and I'm the president of the Historical Society, and I welcome you all. I'm going to turn over this session to Bob Flood. Bob?
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. Today's program has been entitled Pathways to Researching Bradley Beach History, Connecting the Past to the Present. Lost the view.
It'll take a minute for Bob to share his screen.
Yeah, I'm looking for a top.
Towards the middle. Right there, you go right, just there, down a little bit, down to the left.
Share, there you go.
No, that's not it.
No,
Touch share.
No, you don't want share.
no, I need to, well, I think we're on target now. Our program is entitled Pathways.
He's playing.
You're not share.
So he has a share.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
In Zoom, you have to share.
I understand. I need to get back out of the full screen, and that's the button I'm not seeing.
Try your escape button.
Yeah, I'm looking for the escape. Yeah, there you are.
Okay. Still not getting the share button. It comes in at the bottom and I'm not seeing it.
You're not in Zoom, right?
No, getting Zoom. Pick Zoom out.
Yeah, that's Zoom.
That's it.
Okay, now
Now, go to the share button.
that one. Yep.
Okay,
Okay, now pick the presentation out from your screen.
saying share again.
There it is. Okay, click on share. There you go.
Now you go.
Now, play. There you go.
Well, I think we've resolved a couple minor technical issues. What we would like to do at this point is to be in a position to explain to you the not working.
No.
I have no ability to go back to the beginning. All I can do is advance.
Where do you want to go back to the first one?
Yep.
Mhm. Okay. Let's go back. Where are we now?
No,
We go forward?
we're going deeper and deeper into it.
Okay, I'm going back. We're
Hang on.
there. Halfway research on Bradley Beach history.
Which-
Button down. Next.
Do you want to sit here? We'll go.
Okay, third time's a charm. I'd like to welcome you to the presentation on Pathways to Researching Bradley Beach History, Connecting the Past to the Present. For those of you not in attendance here at the Bradley Beach Historical Society meeting, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself in chat via Zoom and maybe list your current hometown. And then during the presentation, please use the chat feature to pose questions or to share information. And Paul Nishampkin will be reviewing the comments and we'll have an opportunity to elaborate on points that people would like clarified or perhaps questions that they have. And I'd also thank you for keeping your microphone muted to avoid distracting noise from interrupting the presentation. One of the first things I'd like to discuss, and it's probably of particular importance to people approaching the age of senior citizens or people who are senior citizens already. And that is that we're going to discuss some of the brain building benefits of research. We're also going to discuss the importance of visuals. Bradley Beach has a need for visuals such as photographs. You might think a particular photograph would not be of interest, but if you have a photograph of, say, Uncle Zeke and Aunt Alice out in front of your house, and you see a little bit of the house and perhaps maybe even a little bit of the house next door, that could actually become extremely important. I'm going to give you some examples visually as we go through this. We're going to talk about some of the ways of using online resources. And since Susan and I, my wife, Susan, is here next to me, since we've been using maps, newspapers, books, pamphlets, brochures, censuses, directories, we found some of the ways that you can avoid some of the confusing aspects of those things so you can cut to the chase and get right to the heart of what you want to do. And please do not underestimate the valuable knowledge of friends and relatives, especially people who have been summer residents or perhaps year-long residents of Bradley Beach for any extended period of time. Regarding the mental benefits of engaging in the research process, there are a number of brain-building activities out there and available. Some of the modern puzzles like Wordle, for example, the task involves a variety of skill and luck. Well, I got to tell you, research has the same thing. There's some skill, and we hope that we can share some for a couple decades or more. One needs to use a variety of tactics. If you started your first Sudoku puzzle back in 1995, and you were using one tactic, you're probably still working on that same puzzle. But obviously, a variety of tactics, quite a few tactics are needed to solve a Sudoku puzzle. Same thing is true in research. The game of tiles, that involves concentration on images and staying on task. When you see some of the photos and maps that I'm going to share with you, you'll see that basically replicates that kind of activity. Another modern game, more recent one, is Connections, and that really emphasizes being able to think outside the box. If you've done Connections, you know sometimes you really got to think outside the box. The number of steps in local research is very subjective. Unlike Sudoku and Wordle, there is no exact solution. One's research develops personal mental benefits and contributes a portion of our local story for others to enjoy. It's unlikely you'll go from A to Z, but you can really develop a good explanation of what a building once, what purpose it once served, or perhaps what a business once contributed to our community. Concerning brainstorming, we're talking about the element of brainstorming we refer to as thinking outside the box. Once you get into the research, what you're going to find, you could be walking the beachfront or driving a car, and once you get into the research, you're going to find things just literally popping into your head. And you'll think to yourself, I wonder if there were advertisements for this particular business. I wonder if there were want ads for new employees. Maybe I could find an article about the store opening or even a remodel. How many years did they stay in business? What kinds of products and services did the business offer? And what about prices and wages paid to employees? With enough searching, I'm telling you, you can find quite a few of those answers. Advertisements are truly one of a researcher's best friends. If you pictured a continuum, and on one extreme end, you had the person who, say, is a slanderer. Well, they want to be anonymous. They might even change their name in order to preserve their anonymity. But among an advertiser, a business person, any good business person that's advertising is promoting their name, their goods, their services. They want you to know all about them and what they have to offer. And because so many people did advertise in local papers like the Asbury Park Press, you'll find that we can gather quite a bit of information by simply looking at some of the advertisements. In that way, small business owners of 100 years ago, they're still communicating to us. Researching, you get to know the owner. You really feel their struggle over time, and you feel their pride of name and business, especially some of these folks that have been around for decades. Some of them were around for 30, 40, and 50 years. Regarding visuals, and I've put this in red because it is so extremely important. The importance of photos and drawings cannot be overstated. In the Bradley Beach archives, we have a number of photos that are very helpful, but at the same time, we have the need for more. So if there's anything lurking out there, if you're talking to friends or relatives and ask them if they have any photos of Bradley Beach, you'll see soon how some of those can be extremely beneficial. The major aids in discovering Bradley Beach's past include obviously vintage postcards, but you'll also see today some images that were found in books, pamphlets, and brochures. And as I mentioned earlier, photos of family and friends depicted in an exterior setting can be extremely helpful. I'm going to give you the first example. I have a book with an 1878 copyright. It's the Historical and Biographical Atlas of the New Jersey Coast. And I used this a couple of years ago when I did a presentation on the Bradley Beach beachfront. This picture that appears in that book is from Ocean Grove looking towards Bradley Beach. This is the foot of Fletcher Lake where Lilligor's Pavilion once stood. So in the foreground of the picture is Ocean Grove, the center of the picture is Ocean Grove, but the background is Bradley Beach. As we examine the background clearer, or a little further, I should say, when we first looked at that, it revealed a building on the sand in the middle of Bradley Beach. And that building we found was extremely helpful in some of the research that we later performed. Now, I'm talking about this building located right in here. If you look at the artist's drawing, that was not their intended purpose. The main focal point was obviously Lilligor's Pavilion. But as soon as we saw that, we knew it struck a chord because something called the Bradley Beach House, pictured here on the bottom of the screen, is the same building that we see pictured here. It was located on the beach itself in what is now Park Place Avenue. And we also found something else, and that is that although even in the more recent Bradley Beach histories, there were two written in the 1940s. And in both of those, there was no mention of the Philadelphia Home for Infants. But what we found is that James A. Bradley's beach house, which was a landmark for decades, was actually first the Philadelphia Home for Infants. And we knew from the copyright date of the book that that had to have existed prior to 1878 when the book was written. And through further research, we were eventually able to find that it was built in 1877. James A. Bradley eventually acquired that building when the Philadelphia Home for Infants could no longer afford to bring babies up through the age of 5 and 6 out from Philadelphia for the summer months and to bring them to the fresh air of the Jersey Shore. We had another photo that we used a couple of years ago, and that was, if you look at the bottom photo, we knew this picture had been around for years, showing a fire station in the background and a fire truck. But we didn't know precisely where it was. Many people thought that this was Lorraine Avenue, and that to the right, you would see the large brick building on the corner of Main and Ocean Avenue, Main and Lorraine Avenue, that is. But we found something in the distance here, and that is we could see a dormer in the old picture. And the old dormer fit perfectly with the dormer that is in the present vantage point. This photo was taken from the other side, the north side of Park Place Avenue. And so we now knew that at one point, where approximately where that car is located, between there and the street, there was a small firehouse. We also were able to determine when the picture was taken. We know that the dormer was constructed back in the year 1907. So somewhere in the time period of 1907 to 1908, that fire station existed there, because in 1908, the fire station moved to the corner of Main Street and Lorraine Avenue. Maps, and I'll talk a couple minutes about the use of maps and doing some of the research. Most of the maps that we have available to us are fire insurance maps. They're very accurate. They're very detailed. By the color alone, you can tell the kinds of construction. Although it appears in an orange brown on the original map, that's more of a yellow color where you see most of the buildings that are depicted here. And those buildings are what became later Schwarz's drugstore. It was originally Painter's grocery store. These are wood constructed buildings. If they are in red, they're brick constructed buildings. And if they have any type of blue to them, there is some steel involved in the construction. So they not only depict the building's location, but these maps help approximate a building's age. If you look, what we've done here with this particular map is to use Adobe Photoshop, because in the 1930s and on, they were using overlays on the maps. And if you look through the overlay, you can actually see what was there first. And there were some buildings that were no longer there in 1930, but they were there in the years before that. And you can also see some buildings that, even the color of the building. So we know this was a brick building located here that was later replaced by a much larger building. It was a gasoline station and continued as a larger filling station on the corner of Park Place Avenue and Main Street. This may be a little difficult for most of you to read. However, Paul has printed copies of what we have up here. We have gone through many versions of historic Bradley Beach maps, and what we've printed here is a list chronologically of the maps that we have found the best to be used. There are many places where you can get certain Sanborn maps, but some Sanborn maps, for some reason or another, the visual aspects of the maps, the clarity of the maps is better in certain sites than it is in others. So you'll notice that we have some maps that we usually go to the New York City Public Library online to access. And then there are others that will use Princeton University or perhaps even some Monmouth County resources. That list will be shared with the people in attendance today, and we will email it to anyone requesting it.
Putting it in the chat now.
Thank you, Paul. Paul is putting that into the chat, so you'll have access to that list of maps. Maps can help time a building's birth. If you look at the top of the map, this is the corner of Ocean Park Avenue. It's actually the southeast corner of Ocean Park in Maine. And where I drew in the 201 using the old Bradley Beach address numbering system, we see that there is no building there on the corner, but there is a building inside. And then beyond that, there's a large building, 3 stories tall, made of brick. Well, we found an advertisement for McDonald and Giffens, and this 1905 map didn't show that because the advertisement came in 1907. So we knew that sometime between the map in 1905 and the advertisement in 1907, somewhere in that little window is when that building that eventually was placed there, and it's still there. Once that building, we know when that building was established, and we could then pursue it a little further. This is an old, a portion of an old postcard. The building that I'm making reference to is out here on the corner. Across the street is the very large building that at one time was Painter's grocery store and then Schwarz's drugstore. But this little 1-story building on the corner, just beyond this utility pole, is the building that is 201. The large three-story building you can see here. And then there's a building in between that was both a house and a business in front of it. And we'll talk about that one too. This is a comparison that shows a little bit about what it might look like today. This building is still here. This was Nafe Poland's house and his business. And then what was Ralph's barbershop after it was the McDonald's business is the little one-story building located here. Today it's Rocco's Pizza. And as you look at Ocean Park in Maine, you can see Nafe Poland's building. And it's in this area where Ralph's barbershop was eventually constructed. He remained in business for decades. One of the biggest benefits to modern research is the ability to search newspapers. It's not without a few shortcomings, but we're going to point those out. But believe me, you can go through an incredible number of newspapers in doing research because of the search engines that have been created to do so. In using newspapers.com, we hit a search button and we put in a keyword or a name. In this case, Nafe Poland. We put that in quotes so that we don't get everybody named Nafe and everybody named Poland. We only want Nafe Poland. We also then will hit the category of pages. We're going to get newspaper pages listed for us, and then we simply ask to show the results. By selecting search and entering the keyword, we could also add a date range. And if we do that, we may only be interested, for example, in something in the 1940s or after the 1950s. We can specify what kind of newspapers dates that we're interested in. In terms of location, that's an important item here, and that is that the location is not Bradley Beach. It's the location of the local newspaper that might cover Bradley Beach. So in doing this, we would be putting Asbury Park for a location. If that didn't produce much, we might try Ocean Grove, because the Ocean Grove Times sometimes did report on events in Bradley Beach and did have some advertisements. If that doesn't work, then we would try the state of New Jersey, because the Freehold Democrat or the Red Bank Register or the Newark Star Ledger or the Newark Evening News, some other paper might be carrying an article or an advertisement on the subject that we're looking for. The key words are extremely important. Remember, I put Nafe Poland in quotes. By placing the key words in quotes, you want to do this in different search formats. I might put in grocers, Bradley Beach. I might do another search if that only produces one or two results or no results. I might put in Bradley Beach grocers. That might actually produce more. Or if I'm searching one of the early drugstores, I would put drugs, Bradley Beach, but put them in quotes, the whole thing. Using a name of a business owner and variations of a name. Let's say the owner was Robert Jones, but he sometimes went by Bob Jones or Jones's Grocery. In many instances, you're going to be able to get certain ads through one version, ads unlike those in another version of a search. And then using variations of an address, not just 900 Main Street, but Main Street and Ocean Park Avenue. In the early years especially, they didn't even use numbers. They just gave a general description. So Main Street and Ocean Park Avenue, or Main Street and Lorraine Avenue, would produce quite a few results. And then, of course, even substituting something as simple as Main ST period for Main Street will produce different results than the actual search of using the full spelling. Recent newspapers sometimes have helpful information in the 20 to 50 year ago columns, but there you got to be cautious, because factual errors we have found from earlier printings are sometimes unknowingly repeated by younger writers who don't have all of the historical knowledge of an era. Newspaper.com searches, there are alternative search options for keywords. We have found, for example, that the historic name in Bradley Beach of Painter has sometimes been spelled with an I, even though the proper painter is with a Y. Sometimes you can get a newspaper article for Yarnell, but that's not how Yarnell was spelled. It was spelled with an ALL ending. So sometimes if you're creative, if you find even one error, and you get even one newspaper with an error like that, believe me, strike it up as a search and you'll probably find more because people tended to repeat those errors. Newspapers, as you know, in the old days, they tended to bleed, especially the older ones. The ink would bleed. So as a result, when modern computers are trying to read 201, it might come out and start giving you information about 601 or 801 or some other number. So you can't always think that you're going to get it just by the 201 number. But you might find helpful information about some of the other businesses in town that suddenly crop up under that search. Lorraine Avenue is really something that comes up under a lot of different spellings. And so you need to actually search if you're dealing with anything on Lorraine Avenue in Maine or just Lorraine Avenue itself. You've got to put in these variations of the word because that's how printers did it. When they heard the name of somebody, put in, they would just spell it the way they thought it sounded. There were also some serendipity research results. Some of these have been really helpful. Susan was doing a newspaper.com search and she was searching for 12 Main Street. What it produced, because of the way the newspaper bled the ink, it produced some information about 201 and a half Main Street. It was next to Ralph's Barber Shop. And that was the odd numbering address for Nafe Poland's bicycle shop, which led then to a whole wealth of additional information about yet another business up in what is now the 800 block. Newspaper.com searches, when you use a date range, let's say I put in, I want to only get newspapers from 1923 to 1958. I might get too many hits. They might tell me, well, there's 87 hits or there's 192 or more. So I would then just reduce the range of dates to a more manageable number. One of the most important things is to select a sort. The newspapers.com program, for example, you can sort by paper date oldest or paper date newest. If you do paper date newest, you're going back into time. And if you're doing paper date oldest, it's going to give you the oldest one possible and work its way forward to the present. But that's an extremely important function. And then the other thing you would want to do, because nobody's going to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do research and I'm going to devote 25 minutes to it and then I'm done forever. You're going to want to go back into your topic, but you want to maintain a list of dates you've already searched to avoid repetitious searching. So if I'm looking up Ralph's Barbershop and I put down, say, 1915 to 1960, if I get as far as, let's say I go through a few dozen of these and then I've got to go on to something else or somebody's knocking on the door and I leave off with 1953, I want to make a note of that. I got to tell you, that's extremely important or you're going to be finding yourself going back to information that you've already accessed. This is the actual kind of search. This is how it would work. Once you put in those criteria of the date, the time, and the location, it'll start producing articles. Not only that, it takes you right to the very page that the article or the advertisement is on. So by hitting the word clip on the program, and I put that on there with a little arrow and a number 1, by hitting clip, it'll produce for you 4 little dots. And all you do is simply arrange those to cover how much of that newspaper page you want to save. And then you clip the title. This happens to be about Ralph's Barbershop. And Ralph in 1922 says that he has a boot black stand, and he's advertising that that stand is there, so he's looking for somebody to come in and man it. And then once you have that clip and you put it down this way, you click save. The beauty of this program is that if I saved something 3 years ago, it's still there. It's still saved under my name in my list of articles, and I can access that anytime I want. Newspaper.com searches has a topic called categories. If you discover that a business owner has moved to another area, you may be able to gather additional information by conducting a newspaper search for that new area. For example, if somebody owned Schwartz drugstore and you found out that individual moved to Kentucky, then you could do a search once you find out where the person, if the newspaper says he's moving to Lexington, you could do a search there. Well, what that will likely turn up eventually is an opportunity to select obituaries, because frequently if a person has closed their business, they've retired and moved on, eventually you're going to get an obituary for that person. And that's going to be extremely helpful, because obituaries of the owners or sometimes even the employees of a store will yield a spouse's name. And then you can do a further search, a keyword search for Beverly Smith, the spouse. And if you put in Beverly Smith engagement, you're going to get a much older article that'll list the early employment information for the couple when they perhaps first were married back in 1891 or something. Newspaper.com searches, again, I pointed out, sometimes they're not always correct. In 2001, the Asbury Park Press said in a brief history about Bradley Beach that in 1901, Schwartz Drugs is open for business on Main Street. Well, they missed that by about 30 years. But obviously, the person who was writing that in 2001 would not have been there in 1901 and didn't know that, and somehow just misinterpreted something. So there are occasions where you don't want to bet all your money on everything you find on a newspaper. Another valuable resource are city directories. Before the telephone directories that we all grew up with, there were directories that listed names, municipalities and neighborhoods, even the occupations and the street addresses, or simply a general description of a residential business location. One of the most useful ones we have is the 1905 Boyd's directory for this area. At the beginning of that directory, there's a time period map, and this is extremely helpful. If you look at the screen, you'll notice that at the bottom of the screen, there's different colors. This is actually Avon at the bottom, but in this area right here, below the white line you see going through here, you'll notice that there are 3 colors. This is Neptune City as it was in 1905, at least a portion of Neptune City. This portion right here eventually becomes a part of Bradley Beach in 1908. But if you're doing a search in Boyd's directory for something around 4th Avenue, 3rd, 2nd, anywhere down to the Sylvan Lake, you would want to actually not search under Bradley Beach. You'd want to search in Boyd's directory under Neptune City. So the map can be extremely helpful. I should also point out under the address over here on the bottom left-hand side of this screen that the address might not be listed specifically as 900 Main Street, but rather in general terms. They use that a lot. They'll say Main Street and Ocean Park Avenue, or they might say Main Street near Ocean Park Avenue. They seem almost to avoid the, the use of address numbers. I want to talk a little bit about research. I mentioned earlier there are so many benefits, but one of them, there's a very healthy and academic benefit to group interaction. So there are some researchers who prefer to work alone. They do a lot of research alone, but by coming together with others in the historical society, or by looking to see if they can get some help from Paul or one of Paul's resource people in the society, then you can actually go a little deeper because by opening up and interacting with some others, they might be able to say, well, yeah, this is what I tried and I had some success. So there are modes of research. You could work as an individual and with a resource person as needed. You could also research with a colleague or a partner, and that's a lot of fun. Sue and I do all of our research together. Every topic we do, Sue has certain areas of research that she has become very well versed in. I tend to deal with some of the more graphic things like the maps and the pictures and the old documents of that nature. But together we collaborate. And when I get stuck, I ask her to help by going through some of the other things that she'll go through, including everything from newspapers.com and ancestry.com. Researching as part of a task force is something I would really encourage, and I'm hoping that there may be some people who would be willing to do this. This is, again, a group of 2 or more people. If we get that many working with a resource person from the Historical Society, we could tackle larger projects. Whereas an individual researcher might just do the study of a single address, and that alone can be very helpful. Researching with a partner, you could lead to the development of the history of 1 or more locations, such as the examples I've given of Ralph's Barbershop, and then right next door, Nath Poland's bicycle shop. A task force, though, they could tackle an entire block of Main Street. And believe me, there's some areas on Main Street that have an awful lot of interesting information, but only being 2 people, and Paul and others who have done some of the research, if we got a couple task force, we could get one that could do that 600 block. That's the one across from Riley Park. And it has a wealth of long-term businesses, and it can be very exciting, but not just the 600 block, the 700 block, the 500 block, and so on. Once the research project material once you've been gathering information, there are a number of things you can do. One is to prepare a chronological listing of the business events at an address. We have some businesses that we found quite a bit of information for, and you can see the evolving use of a building. Another one is to write a short history of a business, perhaps like the one pictured here. This was Painter's Grocery Store. It was originally a small building, and you can see the original outline of the small original building here. But then in 1907, he added on a massive addition that went much deeper and went much taller and further out to the corner of Ocean Park and Main Street. That was one of the biggest grocery stores in all of Monmouth County once it was completed. But anyway, you could write the history of a building, the story of a business that was once at that location, and then you can insert any of the above information, whichever way you go with how you start to take your notes and write your information out to share. You can insert that into the Bradley Beach Mapping Main Street database. And that's what this page depicts. And although it might be a little difficult to read, I can put down, for example, the first year that we found that they were in business in the 1890s. We know that Mr. Painter he rented his building. He closed his business and rented the building in 1921 to the American Food Company, which some of us know as the name Acme. Well, we put down that it was a grocery store, and then we can write down specific information that we found about it. On this one, those of you with great eyes could probably read that, but I'll say that it talks about the fact that Painter had a grocery business in Bradley Beach at several locations. In 1907, he enlarged his grocery store in the 100 block. That's the old numbering system of Bradley Beach. By adding significant square footage, which brought the store more fully out to the corner of Ocean Park Avenue and Main Street. The street address, which was originally part of the 100 block, was redesignated 900 Main Street in 1917 as part of the borough's new address numbering system. And that I need to go back in and clarify because I put down the compliance date. Bradley Beach changed their numbering system of addresses in 1915, and not everybody complied. But in 1917, Bradley Beach made people comply. As you go through the Mapping Main Street database and you enter information, here we placed check marks on the decades that we found this business was in operation. The 1890s, 1900s, the 1910s, and into the 1920s. Whenever information is entered in this program, you want to hit the Save Draft button. That needs to be almost become automatic, no matter what you add, even a few check marks. Hit the Save Draft so you don't lose anything. Because if you venture away and come back, you might not find your work. So you want to hit that Save Draft button on a frequent basis. As you go further down the page for the database, you can insert pictures if there are some to be found. And if the address has been described different ways, or if they had different businesses on Main Street, you can put in the various addresses. So for example, on this one, Painter did have a store at Main Street and Park Place Avenue. He also had the corner here of Main Street and Ocean Park Avenue, and then he had 900 Main Street, which is what it later became called. Anyone doing further research could benefit because you know those are addresses that would help further an understanding and research of that particular place. Finally, you can also add the information such as what I mentioned before, where you can put in a paragraph of information about the business to document your research. These are some additional brain building benefits. Actually, I want to go back and point out one other thing here. You can put in memories at the very bottom of this, and you can add additional pictures if you find them. But by adding memories, you might have personal memories of having shopped at one of these stores on Main Street, or even if it's a memory of a neighborhood in a residential area. Additional brain building benefits of research are simply information retention. As you're doing this, you're going to build up some knowledge that nobody else has of a particular location, a particular business. And you're also going to benefit from the kinds of things that people have written about with journaling, where it works your memory and also working your ability to pay attention to detail. Each of these things are important. If you play pinochle and that is your game, and you play pinochle and that's your mental activity, that's your favorite mental activity, it's a great game. But I got to tell you, you actually, at least from studies that have been done, you can benefit by playing other games because you're getting other challenges. And research will give you a wealth of other activities. You're not just doing the same basic thing over and over. Additional benefits to conducting are things like problem solving and creative exploration. But they're also enjoyable, especially when you're working with others, a partner or with resource persons. Once you get into it, research also can be addictive. I got to tell you, it's like, especially if you enjoy the reward of solving a mystery. Once you get into it, and I talked about how you might just be walking the beachfront or driving in the car, and you'll come up with a question. Wow, I wonder if this happened or that. It basically becomes a mystery that you need to solve. And you're producing a gift for others to enjoy. And for many of us, even that alone is a benefit. To go forward from here, to do that, you would want to set a schedule that works for you. Don't be over ambitious, but if you're willing to do some research, pick yourself a time in your weekly or monthly schedule when you're going to do it, and maybe a location. Agree upon a meeting time, especially if you're going to work with a partner, and say, okay, look, I'm going to handle this portion of it. Why don't you try that? And then next Tuesday or on the third Tuesday of the month, we'll get together and pool our ideas, unless we come up with some outstanding discovery that we got to share immediately. Be open to sharing ideas on approaches and methods. I might say, well, I would prefer to do the newspaper.com searches from oldest first. And your partner might say, well, I actually prefer going from the contemporary time backwards. Well, you could do both. You just, one does one does the other, and someplace you're going to meet. Think creatively. Make frequent use of the brainstorming technique of thinking outside the box. As your research takes you into deeper levels of understanding of your subject, you may want additional resources and the use of more sophisticated research techniques, such as those that involve the interplay of photos, drawings, and sketches, kind of what I showed you earlier, where you could see this in the picture, but you could see that in the map, you could see the advertisement. There's a conflict. There's no building, but there's an advertisement. So, it causes you to then start to do those mental activities to ask yourself the questions, how can that be? The Bradley Beach Historical Society has resource persons available to assist. The Bradley Beach Historical Society persons can, for example, perform Ancestry.com searches. If you don't have Ancestry.com and it's not something you do or use, there are people who have it and are willing to help, and they can help you locate city directories, obituaries, the addresses, employment, state censuses of New Jersey, especially those of 1895, 1905, and 1915. If you want to search, let's say, a residence, or it could be a business, Monmouth County has one of the more incredible county archives open to the public that you can get right online. By going to this site, you can do an open public record search. All you have to simply do, let's say I want to search who owned my house before I had it and who had it before that. How old is it? Well, if you go to this particular page, you can find that by simply putting in the last name, I could put my name in here, or I could put in the name of the person that sold me the house and then do a search, and it says select the document type. Well, by document type, I'll simply put in when that was. I know that I bought the house in January of 1970, so I'll put that in. That'll show me the person that I got it from, and it will also show me from whom they got that house from. And then I can go further, perhaps back into the 40s or the 30s in a subsequent search. I want to talk a little bit about something that Susan discovered. We're kind of pleased to be able to describe this to you because it's something that just happened within the past week. For years, we've been trying to figure out when did Bradley Beach change their numbering system for the addresses from north to south. Prior to the annexation of the eastern part of Neptune City in 1908, we know that the numbering of Main Street, Bradley Beach addresses, started at the north up on the Neptune Township line, which we refer to as that section called Ocean Grove. And that's where the highest numbers that's where the lowest numbers were, and then the highest numbers were at the southern end of the borough. Back at that time, the borough ended just beyond Fifth Avenue, between Fifth and Fourth Avenue in the middle of the block. The odd numbered addresses were on the east side of Main Street. So you remember I showed you 201, which eventually became Ralph's Barber Shop. That was an odd number on the east side of Main Street. In 1915, the address system was changed. Susan found that and found a couple more articles just recently on this. With the lowest number address at the south end of the borough, they decided they would then go further north, with the highest numbers being at the Neptune line, which meant a lot of addresses had to be changed. The address of Ralph's Barber Shop at 201 became 816 Main Street. And the address of, for example, the McNeely Agency, which is a large building in the 600 block, it used to be 425 Main Street. Under the new numbering system, it's 604 Main Street. Not everybody complied, as I mentioned earlier. And in 1917, all Main Street residents and business owners were made to comply. Here's an example. January 5, 1917, Asbury Park Press, there's an ad that says that the Philadelphia Meat Market is at 211 Main Street. It was. But in May 11th of that year, the ad indicates the Philadelphia Meat Market was at 808 Main Street. Yeah, it was. The market didn't move. They finally complied with the modern address system. To sum up, I've talked a little bit about the brain building benefits of research, and I wish I could tell you more about it, but it seems to be working. There are a lot of things we can do as we get older to stimulate our memories and to try to stave off any of the harmful effects of aging. Research is one valuable way because there are so many components to it. The importance of visuals. If you have access to any family photos, whether they're a decade old or 2 decades old or more, believe me, even a small portion of a photo can have very beneficial results to researching. And then using these online resources. There are people who will help in terms of helping you with maps, providing you with maps, showing you how to access newspapers, and then also to give you some clues on some of the other resources available. Finally, the valuable knowledge of friends and relatives. There are people who, maybe older relatives who have fond memories of going to this store or this particular offering in town or that one. Those are valuable things that can help us document the past of Bradley Beach to help bring it to the present. And with that, I thank you. Sure.
Thank you very much, Bob. I apologize for the echo. I hope it's not bothering you. We have a little technical problem here. What I'd like to do is tell you a little bit more about how we can help you in the Historical Society. We do have subscriptions to newspapers.com and ancestry.com. And you can basically come in to make an appointment to come in and meet me in the museum space in the Biazzi Center. And I can give you access to that on my computer. Also, 1 second, I have to adjust something here. There we go. Also, we have a lot of records here, which unfortunately I can't share with you right now online, but we have quite a few maps. We have the Sanborn maps from 1930, updated to 1965, which are a wealth of information on property. We have in our archives a partial photographic history of the buildings in town. It's hit or miss. I'd say we probably have only about maybe a 10 to 20% of the houses actually in photographs and postcards. But that's an area that we really are trying to work on right now. We're also in the middle of the Mapping Main Street project, which will go on for probably another 2 to 3 years at least. And our database is starting to really flesh out with all the businesses that existed on Main Street from the founding of the town to the present. We know at this point of at least about 2,000 different businesses, believe it or not. This is a major project to try to record any detailed history on the individual businesses. But we're now compiling at least the basic information about what businesses were where, when they started, when they ended. And we're starting to get people to tell us their memories of a business, and in that way flesh out interesting details on each business. We'd love you to help us with this, and we'd be glad to work in teams, especially on anything that you would like to research, maybe something that was a store that was in your family's business at some point, or any fond memories you have of Bradley Beach in the past. And we'd love to help you research that. We will be doing a presentation probably in the spring on specifically on researching your own home. And I can tell you right now that basically what Bob mentioned with the online Monmouth County records is useful. Eileen Winkler mentioned that she was reconstructing her house's history from that. Good luck to you. You can also, now that COVID is over, you can get into the archives in Freehold. Unfortunately, when we first wanted to start doing a historic house research project 2 years ago, it was during COVID, and Freehold was not allowing people into the archives. It is possible to get in there. You have to make appointments, and they have the actual physical records, the actual deeds to go back to the beginning if you don't have them already. But we will have a presentation on that in detail. Vinnie Dix, who could not make this meeting today, will be making a presentation and will be coordinating our whole house research project. If there are any questions, please ask them now. Unmute yourself and ask them, and we'd be happy to try to answer them. Nobody has any questions? We have about 8 people in the room. We were hoping for a much larger crowd, but I hope it was just the weather that kept them away. Eileen Winkler says that she thanks us for a great program. You're very welcome, Eileen.
December 8th.
Actually, you want to come over here and tell them what we have coming up?
Hi, everyone. This is Jeanette Lau. So the next event we have is on December 8th, and is about the intergenerational stories of Bradley Beach families. So we hope to see you then. It will be also held 2 ways, in-house and also on Zoom, right?
Yes, this is our first attempt at what's known as a hybrid meeting,
Right.
Live and on Zoom at the same time. And we're hoping that we technically can work out how to do this smoothly.
Right. But yeah, but if you're welcome to come here, we have refreshments and it's a nice time to get together with people too.
Right. The people who are actually here live are going to share refreshments and questions. And also I've pulled out some of our archives for them to go through that I think they'll find interesting. So unless there are some questions out there, last chance. I will thank you very much, and I will end this Zoom session. Unmute yourself if you have a question. No, I guess not. So thank you very much. Bye-bye. And thank you, Bob and Sue Flood.
What did you do before? What did you do before?